it out somewhere else. Now, Alfred Adler is very interesting, and I really like Adler. So I'd pay more attention to Adler than Jung. Adler was really responsible for a field of psychology that was called individual psychology. Now, Adler, as a child, he had a number of different siblings that were older, and as a kid, he was really like a sickly little kid. He had rickets, so he couldn't walk. He had braces. He kept getting sick. At one point, he had pneumonia really bad, and the family doctor came over, and he overheard the doctor say to his parents that little Alfred was probably going to die. I don't know if you can even imagine having those thoughts or hearing that as a child. So what impact would this sickly childhood have on him? Well, he really started to excel in school. So in some ways, he probably felt really bad about himself because he was kind of like this weak child, but in another area, he kind of overcompensated. So here, with Adler's theories, we're going to emphasize the importance of social conditions on personality. And there's three fundamental social issues that everyone faces in their development. So we have occupational tasks, which is like education too, societal tasks, and then love tasks. And Adler was part of Freud's group as well. And I hate to say, and you'll see the inferiority come in, but it went Freud, Jung, Adler. So Adler was kind of third in line. And really what he took was Freud's approach, and then he really added increasing emphasis on society and social relations. He wasn't content with just like death and aggression. So one of the central themes to personality, according to Adler, is striving for superiority. And you've heard somebody say, oh, he's got an inferiority complex. Well, that comes right from Adler. And the superiority complex is something that Adler theorized as being something that compensates for inferiority. So you've probably heard that too. Somebody say, oh, that guy, he's got a superiority complex. And they don't even know that comes out of Adler's work. So all of us are born with some sort of weakness. And really, I identify with Adler because when I was a kid, I had like a hip disease in my leg. So I had like leg braces, like little Forrest Gump. And as I got older, and I never really thought about this until I started teaching this class, but I got really involved in like snowboarding and skateboarding and mountain biking. I can't really run very good. I mean, I can run just fine, but not great. And I'm not exactly like a big dude, so I didn't really play football or anything like that. But what I did was I played sports that theoretically where I could like jump on something like a bike or a snowboard and didn't have to run. And I think I overcompensated that way. I was also a terrible student. You might not want to hear that from your professor, but I did terrible in school almost through high school. And somewhere along the way, I think I overcompensated. So according to Adler, we all have our perceived deficiencies, and our personality becomes over-exaggerated compensation for our perceived deficiencies. Now, Adler also talked about the aggression drive, and this is a drive to lash out against the inability to achieve something. So if you get stuck and you're stagnant and you're trying to achieve something, that can really frustrate you. That's when people lash out and act aggressive. And this can also be perceived as a reaction to helplessness. So you feel helpless, you can't do something, you feel bad about that. How do people react? And then the masculine protest is another of Adler's concepts. And And this is the individual's attempt to be to be competent and to be independent. So this is not just for boys, but this is girls too. And the masculine protest is like little kids that they just want to do everything on their own. They want to, I don't need your help, I can do it on my own. So think about that. Superiority striving is striving to obtain power in superiority over one's inferiority. So our perceived weaknesses drive our future personality. And perfection striving is based on fictional goals that we have created for ourselves. So I ask students about this a lot. Like, what exactly is it that you want to do? Or what job do you think you're going to have? And oftentimes students will say, I don't know. Others will have like these fictional final goals that they have in their mind, and they're striving to meet that. Like, I want to be a biochemist, or I want to do this or that. And that final goal, the fictional goal that they have, really drives their view of perfection in the world, and it has an impact on their personality now. Adler was also the first one to introduce birth order and family dynamics into the concept of personality, and I had to write about that extensively. I don't really think that's quite as important, but students usually like that. So what's a firstborn child like versus the lastborn child? I'm a firstborn child, maybe that's why I don't like that. But there have been some studies by this guy named Frank Sullivan that has found that firstborn children are likely to be driven towards success and achievement, but later-born children are revolutionary and creative. So if you look at people that have contributed like revolutionary ideas to our society, typically they've been later-born children. As an older child, I don't know if I believe that, but that is Adler's work. So here are Adler's. He developed a personality typology as well that's very similar to Jung's, but this was also very similar to those original Greek humors that we talked about in the first couple classes. So his types are based on social interests and activity, and personality types like ruling, dominant, getting, leaning, avoiding, and socially useful. So depending on these areas are dependent upon your social interests and your level of activity. So like if you're not very active and you have no social interests, so we'll go to low, low, then you have an avoiding personality type. If you're very, very active and you have a lot of social interests, then you would be socially useful according to Adler's type. Go to the book for more information on that. Ruling dominant, you have low social interests, but you have high levels of energy. And getting leaning is low, low on both. And really, like, look at the chart with the humors. It's kind of interesting how these things correlate. And I know this sounds kind of weird, and it is, but I like Adler, I like Jung. Jung is kind of interesting for me to read, and it's a little hard for me to apply, but I like his theories. And I like the idea of the archetypes and its influence in mythology, in art, and creative endeavors. And then Adler is really one of my favorite theorists. So if I like somebody, I probably put questions about them on the midterm. But I see Adler's theories in my own personality development. And once in a while, students will kind of, they'll pick one theorist and they'll go, oh my God, that describes me. Well, Adler's kind of mine. So keep that in mind. Remember your perceived deficiencies or your weaknesses, and in this class I want you to strive for superiority, but don't develop one of those superiority complexes. So study this material for the midterm, which is coming up.